Once again, the Queen of Consorts surprises us, but not in a good way.
Made lurid and false claims about the royal family, which played on her fears and fueled paranoia.
The council meeting was supposed to last less than an hour. Instead, one sentence changed the atmosphere inside the palace completely. With Catherine absent and William seated across the table, Camilla launched a direct attack on the future king's judgment, loyalty, and readiness to lead. But the most dangerous part was not what she said. It was that Charles heard every word, and his reaction stunned everyone in the room. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles had entered the room expecting routine business, not a family rupture. The council, a private gathering where senior royals and advisors discuss sensitive household and constitutional matters, had been called to review future responsibilities and internal priorities. Catherine was not there. She believed the discussion was ordinary, leaving William to face the room without the person who knew best how deeply palace pressure had been wearing on him. Camilla changed everything when she turned toward the prince and accused him of undermining his father. She said he was pushing his own agenda, questioning decisions too aggressively, and behaving as though the throne already belonged to him. William did not interrupt. He placed his pen on the table, straightened slowly, and asked whether she truly intended to make those accusations in front of Charles. His restraint landed harder than anger. The king watched his son absorb every word. Then Camilla went further. She brought Catherine into it, suggesting that William's resistance had grown stronger because his wife encouraged him to challenge the old order. Charles' disbelief hardened instantly. Catherine was not present to answer for herself, and the monarch understood exactly why that mattered. The dispute was no longer about policy. It had become an attack on William's marriage, judgment, and loyalty. One advisor tried to redirect the discussion, but Charles raised a hand. Silence followed. He told Camilla to repeat exactly what she had said about William and Catherine. She did not retreat. The queen consort insisted someone had to challenge the future king before his influence became impossible to control, and her refusal to soften the accusation changed the balance of the room. Charles closed the council folder with a sharp finality. He ordered every advisor to leave, keeping only Camilla and William behind. The doors shut. The prince remained still, but he knew the meeting had crossed into something far more personal. His father was no longer managing a council dispute. He was preparing to confront his wife. And that reaction only made sense once the deeper history between these three people was understood, and the wounds beneath it. Behind every royal confrontation sits something far more dangerous than protocol: family memory. William was not simply defending his position. Charles was not merely defending an heir, and Camilla was not speaking only as queen. Each carried years of private history into that council chamber, turning a disagreement over influence into something painfully personal. Catherine's absence made the moment worse, because her name had become part of a battle she had never been allowed to enter. William stayed controlled after the doors closed, but the restraint cost him. As Prince of Wales, the title traditionally held by the monarch's heir and a symbol of the next reign, he had taken on more long-term responsibility, convinced that preparing for the future meant questioning decisions when necessary. He looked at Charles and said, disagreement did not frighten him. What disturbed him was hearing Catherine used as ammunition when she was not there to answer for herself. Camilla heard the accusation beneath his calm. She had spent years securing a respected place beside the king, and she knew the monarchy's future would eventually revolve around William and Catherine rather than herself. Every new responsibility given to the couple reminded her that influence beside a reigning monarch was not the same as authority over the next reign. She insisted her objections were about balance, not jealousy, yet Charles could hear how personal the issue had become. Charles looked from his wife to his son and felt the trap closing around him. Camilla was the woman he had defended through decades of scrutiny. William was his heir, but more than that, he was his child. Protecting one now seemed to require confronting the other, and the king understood that silence would no longer preserve peace. It would deepen the wound. William then said something Charles had not expected. The council attack was not the first challenge. Recently, Camilla had questioned several of his decisions in private, sometimes through objections, sometimes through conversations that exposed her frustration. He had dismissed them as differences in style because he did not want every disagreement becoming a family crisis. Charles asked one question: did Catherine know? William shook his head. He had kept much of it from her because he wanted home separate from palace tension. That answer changed the king immediately. His son had not been escalating the conflict. He had been absorbing it. Camilla said nothing. Suddenly the explosion that morning looked less like a beginning than the consequence of something older. Weeks earlier, one private meeting had changed their relationship. To understand why Camilla finally challenged William openly, that forgotten encounter had to be brought back into the light. The true beginning of the crisis did not happen around the council table. It happened weeks earlier behind a closed door, during a conversation so controlled that almost nobody understood its significance at the time. William believed he had simply rejected one proposal. Camilla saw something entirely different, proof that the future king was prepared to challenge her authority openly. From that moment onward, every polite exchange carried the memory of what had happened between them. William had already become more protective of where responsibility ended and interference began. Ceremonial planning, meaning the organization of official royal appearances and formal family duties, had become one of several areas where future roles were being quietly debated. He believed Catherine should be spared unnecessary internal battles, but he also believed nothing affecting her responsibilities, their children, or their shared future, should be decided without her knowledge. Camilla chose that pressure point 3 weeks before the council confrontation. In a private conversation, she asked William to approve a plan that would reduce Catherine's role in a major family-focused royal initiative and shift greater control elsewhere. The prince refused immediately. He told the queen consort that decisions affecting his wife would not be made around her, and that Catherine deserved to be consulted before anyone altered responsibilities carrying her name. Camilla took the refusal personally. She pushed her chair back and accused him of behaving as though he already controlled the royal household, the network of staff and offices supporting the monarch and senior family members. William did not raise his voice. He answered that protecting Catherine was not a claim to the throne. That calm reply made the disagreement worse, because she heard confidence where he intended only a boundary. William left unsettled by how quickly policy had become personal. Later that evening, he nearly told Catherine everything. He stopped when he found her relaxed with their family, choosing silence because he did not want palace tension entering their private life. The decision felt protective then. In hindsight, it allowed the resentment to keep growing unseen. Camilla carried the meeting differently. The rejection became proof, in her mind, that William's rising confidence could eventually reduce her access and influence. She began to fear that the future monarchy would leave little space for her authority beside the next king. That fear hardened into a decision. Before the later council meeting, Camilla resolved to challenge William in front of Charles, believing public resistance would force the issue into the open. Now Charles understood exactly what had happened, and the knowledge did not calm him. It made him furious, because a private resentment had been deliberately carried into his council and turned against his son. The hidden trigger was finally clear, and the confrontation waiting behind those closed doors was about to cross a line none of them could erase. For several seconds, Charles says absolutely nothing. Then he stands. The movement is small, but its effect is immediate. Camilla stops speaking. William remains seated. And the king, who has spent years mastering the art of controlled public expression, finally abandons restraint. His anger is not theatrical. It is personal. The council argument has become a family reckoning, and Charles intends to make one boundary unmistakably clear. Charles now understands that this was never a sudden disagreement. Camilla had already tried to reduce Catherine's role weeks earlier, and the failed attempt had hardened into resentment. The council, a formal setting where sensitive royal decisions are discussed, should have remained focused on responsibility and continuity. Instead, she had carried a private grievance into that room and aimed it directly at William. William refuses to make the moment worse. He tells his father quietly that he does not need rescuing. He needs fairness. The prince does not want Camilla humiliated, and he does not want Catherine turned into a weapon again. What matters to him is simple. Disagreements must stay about decisions, not become attacks on character, marriage, or loyalty. Charles turns toward Camilla and finally lets the anger out. He tells her that challenging William is one thing, but questioning his motives and dragging Catherine into the argument when she is absent is another. The king places both hands firmly on the table. His son, he says, will not be treated like an enemy inside his own family. Camilla looks stunned, but refuses to collapse under the pressure. She insists she was protecting Charles from an heir becoming too powerful too soon. She fears William is moving faster than anyone is willing to admit. The monarch rejects that argument immediately. Preparing for the throne, he says, is not betrayal. It is the prince's duty to understand the responsibilities he will one day inherit. Charles then admits something he had kept to himself. For months, he had noticed the strain between them. He had seen the guarded conversations, the sharp objections, the moments when Camilla bristled at William's confidence. He had hoped time would soften it. Instead, his silence had allowed resentment to grow. William surprises them both. He asks his father not to punish Camilla in anger. That request stops the confrontation cold. Charles listens, but his decision has already begun forming. The council will not resume until he decides who should be involved in discussions about William and Catherine's future responsibilities. Camilla finally understands the danger. Her influence may now have limits. Charles had defended his son. What came next would reveal how far he was willing to turn that anger into authority. The shouting ends, but the danger does not. In royal life, the most consequential decisions are rarely delivered at maximum volume. They arrive quietly, after the doors close, and emotion gives way to authority. Charles now faces a choice far more difficult than defending William in the heat of an argument. He must decide whether Camilla's attack was merely personal, or whether it has compromised her place inside discussions concerning the monarchy's future. Charles sits alone after the confrontation, the council folder open again in front of him. The council, a private forum where sensitive royal priorities and future responsibilities are discussed, gives the king broad control over who participates and what subjects are addressed. He reaches the agenda item covering William's future role, draws a line beneath it, and pauses. The anger has cooled. The decision has not. William knows exactly why that choice matters. As heir, the prince must be prepared for responsibilities that cannot simply begin on the day he becomes king, so regular consultation with Charles is essential to continuity. Senior advisors quietly understand the same thing. If distrust poisons those conversations, the damage would reach far beyond one family argument. Charles feels the personal cost immediately. Camilla has stood beside him through years of pressure, criticism, and public scrutiny. Restricting her involvement would not feel like an ordinary administrative move. It would touch his marriage. Yet the monarch also knows that allowing private loyalty to override his relationship with William would create a deeper weakness inside the institution he is trying to protect. William enters before anything is finalized. He tells his father not to make another decision involving Catherine without speaking to her first. The future king refuses to let a measure designed to protect his wife become another choice made around her. Charles listens, then agrees. Silence, he admits, helped create this crisis. Charles makes the boundary clear. Camilla will temporarily step away from council discussions directly involving William, Catherine, and succession planning, the structured preparation for how royal duties and authority pass to the next monarch. The queen consort will not be publicly humiliated, but inside the palace the meaning is unmistakable. Her access to those conversations is no longer automatic. Charles adds one final condition. Catherine must be told exactly what was said about her, not a softened version and not a partial summary. William knows what that means. Now he must go home and explain everything. The attack, the earlier tensions, and the silence he thought was protection. For William, that journey suddenly feels heavier than anything he faced inside the palace. The king has drawn the boundary. The hardest conversation is waiting beyond the council room. Catherine does not learn about the confrontation from a briefing note or palace advisor. She hears it directly from William. And what wounds her most is not simply that Camilla criticized him. It is discovering that her own name was used to question her husband's judgment while she was nowhere near the room. Then William tells her something else, that he had been hiding earlier tensions to protect her, and her expression changes completely. William returns carrying more than anger. He carries the weight of Charles defending him, Camilla refusing to retreat, and the knowledge that keeping Catherine outside the conflict can no longer be called protection. A palace briefing, meaning an official explanation prepared by royal staff, could have softened the details. He refuses that option. If secrecy helped create the crisis, then honesty has to begin at home. Catherine listens as he repeats Camilla's words as carefully as he can. William tells her how his judgment was questioned, how his loyalty to Charles was challenged, and how her own influence was used to explain his resistance. She does not interrupt. The princess simply lowers her eyes for a moment and asks, "How long has this been happening?" The pause before his answer tells her almost everything. William admits there was an earlier confrontation. He explains that Camilla had tried to reduce Catherine's role in a family-focused initiative, and that he had rejected the proposal immediately. He also admits he chose not to tell her. The prince believed he was keeping unnecessary palace tension away from their private life. Catherine hears something different. Decisions touching her name were unfolding while she remained unaware. Catherine's hurt slowly becomes frustration. She understands why her husband wanted to shield her, but she tells William that protection without information can become another form of exclusion. If people are debating her responsibilities, she wants the right to know. He does not argue. He knows she is right. William then tells her what Charles decided. The king defended both of them and restricted Camilla's involvement in future discussions concerning their responsibilities. Catherine is genuinely surprised. She knows the monarch loves his son, but drawing such a clear boundary inside the family carries enormous emotional weight. Catherine refuses to treat the decision as a victory. She tells William she does not want Camilla humiliated, isolated, or pushed into another corner. She wants one thing: the behavior to stop. Then she makes her own decision. Before Charles formalizes anything further, Catherine wants to speak to Camilla alone. No king, no advisors, no secretaries. For the first time, she is stepping directly into the conflict, and that private conversation will decide whether this family fracture deepens or finally begins to close. There is no council table this time, no advisors, no king, no William. Catherine and Camilla enter the room, knowing there will be nobody else to absorb the discomfort or redirect the conversation. One woman has been attacked in her absence. The other has just watched her influence restricted because of what she said. Yet instead of beginning with accusation, Catherine asks a deceptively simple question. Why did you believe you had to fight him? Catherine had insisted on privacy, because she knew another formal meeting would only create more defenses. An institutional meeting, meaning a structured palace discussion, shaped by official roles and advisors, could force both women to speak as royal figures instead of family members. She wanted none of that. Camilla arrived expecting anger, perhaps even a demand for further consequences, because Charles had already made his fury unmistakable. Catherine speaks first and keeps her voice steady. She tells Camilla that the deepest injury was not disagreement with William. It was using her name to question him while she was absent. The queen consort begins to defend herself, saying the issue was larger than one remark, but Catherine stops her gently. She is not asking about palace politics. She is asking why the disagreement became personal. Camilla finally answers without hiding behind authority. William's growing confidence frightened her. Every time the prince challenged a decision, she saw a future moving closer, one in which her influence beside Charles might suddenly count for very little. She had convinced herself that his resistance was not simply about boundaries. She believed it was the beginning of her removal from the next royal household. Catherine listens, then gives her the truth she had never expected. William had never spoken about pushing Camilla out of family life. His concern was protecting decisions involving his wife, his children, and the responsibilities they would eventually carry. The future king wanted limits, not exile. Camilla goes quiet. The fear that had driven her now looks different. She sees that she had reacted not to something William threatened, but to something she imagined might happen. And by fighting that imagined future, she had created the very distance she feared. Camilla apologizes directly. She admits she should never have used Catherine's name, questioned William's motives, or forced Charles into choosing between wife and son. Catherine accepts the apology, but she does not pretend trust has returned. Words, she says, are only the beginning. Camilla must accept the boundaries that now exist, without turning them into another grievance. That private apology changes everything. But soon the palace, and then the public, will see the consequences too. Royal disputes rarely remain private forever. By the following morning, the council confrontation has escaped the palace walls, stripped of context, and transformed into headlines. The public sees anger, rivalry, and the possibility of a divided monarchy. But one particular moment captures the country's attention more powerfully than any palace statement. William and Charles appearing together after a night in which everyone believed father and son might have been pulled apart. Camilla sees the first wave of coverage alone and understands what has changed. The council, a private gathering where senior royals and advisors discuss sensitive family matters, is now being discussed as though every argument inside it belongs to the public. Reports focus on one detail. Her participation in certain future discussions may have been restricted. She closes the newspaper without comment, but the silence says enough. Palace staff refuse to feed the frenzy. They describe continuity, duty, and stability, avoiding briefings that could turn one family rupture into war. That restraint matters because once royal camps begin answering headlines, private tension can harden into public division. Charles supports the cautious approach. The king knows that protecting the monarchy now means refusing to let anger dictate the next message. William hates watching a painful family failure become entertainment. Catherine reminds him that they cannot control every headline or interpretation. They can control only what they do next. The prince listens, and her calm steadies him. She has already spoken privately with Camilla, yet few outside the family know reconciliation has begun beneath the noise. Then one front page takes over the morning. A major newspaper runs the words "King backs his heir" above an image of Charles and William leaving a royal engagement together. Outside Buckingham Palace, a crowd gathers while broadcasters describe the appearance as a show of unity between monarch and successor. The king does not explain the council argument, and his son does not mention it. Their decision to stand together becomes the message. Camilla sees that image too. This time, she does not read it as an attack. She understands that Charles is protecting continuity, not humiliating her. Catherine's private words return to her. Accepting consequences matters more than winning the argument. The queen consort remains quiet, and that silence now carries restraint rather than defiance. Charles refuses to reverse the boundary he imposed. Forgiveness cannot mean pretending nothing happened. William agrees, while Catherine insists accountability must not become exile. Camilla accepts that distinction. Now all four are ready for one final meeting. The headlines have chosen winners and losers, but the family's real verdict will be measured by trust, responsibility, and the boundaries they are finally prepared to keep. The final meeting is quieter than the confrontation that created it. Nobody raises a voice. Nobody needs to. Charles sits between the wife who feared losing her place and the son who believed his family had been unfairly targeted. Catherine sits beside William, no longer absent from a conversation involving her own future. What follows is not another royal explosion. It is something harder, four people accepting exactly what their choices have cost. Charles begins with the truth none of them can avoid. The monarchy cannot function if private fear becomes institutional conflict. As heir, William must be able to question decisions without having his loyalty treated as suspect. The role of heir, meaning the person next in line to inherit the crown, carries preparation as well as duty. The king makes clear that protecting that process is not favoritism, it is continuity. Camilla listens without interruption. Charles does not cast her as an enemy, and he refuses to turn accountability into rejection. She remains his wife, but the boundaries around future discussions have changed. The queen consort turns to William and apologizes for accusing him of acting against his father. Then she faces Catherine and apologizes for using her name when she was not present to answer for herself. William accepts the apology, but he draws a line. Future disagreements must stay focused on decisions, never motives, marriages, or private loyalties. Catherine agrees, while making clear that she does not want one destructive episode to become a permanent family war. She wants honesty, limits, and respect. Charles keeps his earlier decision in place. Discussions directly concerning William and Catherine's future responsibilities will now be handled within a narrower circle, and Camilla will no longer be automatically included. The king frames it as structure, not punishment. Then he admits his own failure. By ignoring smaller signs of tension, he allowed resentment to build until it exploded. Camilla finally understands that influence cannot be protected by confrontation. William learns that restraint can carry more authority than retaliation. Catherine learns something equally important. Being protected through silence can still mean being excluded. Charles makes the final choice unmistakable. He will protect his marriage, but he will not allow that marriage to weaken the bond between monarch and heir. No one leaves triumphant. No one leaves destroyed. They leave changed. The anger has been confronted. The apology has been given. The boundary has been drawn. And the family walks away together, knowing unity means nothing without respect. This time, none of them misunderstands that truth. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.